up nicely. It's the Drew and Fuse Show. The Drew and Fuse Show. The Drew and Fuse Show. Yeah, they clean up nicely. Yeah.
Hey.
Yo. What's up? So we're going to jump right in it today. Today's guest is a special one. He is born and raised in Philly, but now living in LA. He's a part of the Scratch Mechanics DJ crew and a 20-year turntable veteran. He's one of the few DJs that has done a 4-turntable set with Jazzy Jeff. He's held residencies in Philadelphia, Atlantic City, Scottsdale, Reno, Miami, Las Vegas, and many more. He's done official remixes for artists such as Dev, Leon Bridges, Silk City, and others. Please help us welcome DJ Excel.
What up? What up?
Hey, how you doing?
What's going on, guys?
Good. I'm like I said earlier, I'm hanging in here by a thread today.
Yeah,
so
man.
Trying to be positive and upbeat.
Yeah, it is really crazy that you guys started the podcast and both teams are the teams that are in the Super Bowl. You guys couldn't have written a better script for this, you know?
Yeah, totally. I was just out there with him a couple weeks ago. We did like a set of we played together in San Diego and then and Long Beach and then in LA 2 weekends ago. So
that's rad, man. Yeah, you guys made the little tour, you know?
Yeah, totally. So we're going to jump right into it. We're going to do our little rapid fire question round. So here we go. What was the last thing you listened to on Spotify or Apple Music or whatever you use?
There was this record a girl asked for that I never heard of before called like Toto something. It sounds like it's like a Puerto Rican house record that I was confused about. What was it called? Toto D? I'm probably saying that totally wrong. But yeah, that was the last thing I listened to. It's by Raul Alejandro, Toto de T.
Okay. Do you find yourself listening to a lot of music?
I listen to music all the time, like all day before we got on this podcast. But my music ranges like what I listen to. It just depends. So what I found myself listening to more than not is I've just been finding these old radio tapes from like the 90s. Like I was just listening to a Kid Capri mixtape from 89. I was listening to Funkmaster Flex from 94. I don't know, like, I mean, you guys probably understand that, like, you know, radio was a lot different back then, you know?
Totally.
So I find myself jumping from things like that into, you know, whatever the new release is. I listen to the Gunna joint. I listen to Donda. Like, you know, I like good music across the board, but I just think the way I was raised and who I am as a person, I gravitate more towards these like older mixtapes and shows. And I just, you know, I think there was just, I don't know, there's something dope to go back to, like, make sure your memories of what you thought it was match, right?
Yeah, totally.
Because sometimes you feel like, man, am I making this way iller than it was? Like, did I really think my childhood was that dope? And then you know, sometimes it doesn't line up and sometimes it does. And you're like, damn, like this was actually really fly. So I find some mixes that are really cool. And it's just dope to see what was happening back then again in real time, you know?
Yeah, totally.
So, but I have like Apple Music and Spotify and I listen to a bunch of different shit. So. Yeah.
I'm curious, do you own these original tapes or are you finding like them bootleg on the
honestly,
web
man,
somewhere?
I've been finding a lot of these on Mixcloud, you know, and I mean, I got homies that have all the original tapes. I guess if I wanted to go down that road, I could. But oddly enough, just searching through Mixcloud, I've been finding just tons of stuff. Like I found this one page that had just a grip of Stretch and Bob recordings. So for I don't know how well versed your listeners are in like underground rap music, but Stretch Armstrong and Bob Ito had a college radio show back in the day, and it's where a lot of the really well-known artists from that era kind of like premiered themselves before they got big. So Big L, Nas, Jay, you know, like all these artists, and these are the tapes where they showed up for the first time. So like listening to the radio show that Big L brought Jay-Z, his man, on, who no one really knew at the time,
Yeah.
is crazy, right? Knowing what Jay-Z has become, you're listening to like the beginning of this, and you've followed the story all the way through. So it's
Did
just
you
kind of
watch
cool.
their podcast?
Of course,
Or
yeah,
no, I'm
yeah.
sorry.
The
I'm sorry. Their biography. They did
Yeah,
like a
Yeah.
I
little
watched it. It was great.
documentary.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's a trip. Like, college radio show was at the epicenter of all this stuff, you know?
It's cool, and I think if anybody that's listening hasn't or is unfamiliar, that it's a good piece of DJ history to go and watch and learn
Indeed.
from, because
Yeah.
it's pretty neat to see the effect that those two guys had on music as a whole in the United States and
Yeah. Yeah.
globally.
Well, it just goes to show you too, man, like, you know, they were doing a show back then. And when you listen to it, it was just them doing this podcast. You know what I mean? Like, they just did it for fun. They were involved in the culture. Like, there really was no expectation. And it turned into something that is forever, you know, cemented in the culture for eternity, you know? So you just never really know.
Yeah, some of the stories of them just artists, say like the Wu-Tang Clan going and trying to find just the signal and sitting in their car, sitting at a park just so they could
Yeah.
listen to the show, and going down and knocking on the door to rap and
Yeah.
whatnot on it. So
Yeah, I mean, I was never able to really hear their show because in Philly, it just didn't broadcast that far. But we had a radio station in Princeton that my man G did, and G worked for Wu. So that was the first time that I heard Wu, and I heard it a year or two prior to it ever coming out. And every Thursday, we would like tune into the show, record the show, and it was just underground hip hop for hours, you know? And every now and then you'd get an artist come through. Same type deal, you know what I mean? But it was just a Princeton college radio show that we did get called The Raw Deal, and there was another show called Vibes and Vapors. And I found another like website that had all these old shows hosted, and I was able to listen to some of those again too, and it was just, it's dope to hear it. So yeah,
so you ask about you go back and you listen. Was it as cool as you remember? Right?
Yeah.
How does that hold up for you? Just curious.
It's 50-50, like there's definitely times where I'm like, man, like this was really dope to be able to be a part of this. There's other times too where you hear the mixing and you're like, huh, I don't remember it being this like rough, because now you're playing vinyl again. So record skip, we got so used to not having a record skip that you forgot, like it was just common to have record skip, my main like mentor, who's also in my crew, Jay Ski, he's pretty much who I like listen to on the radio nonstop. That's who I like recorded. That's where like the blueprint of me learning how to DJ came from. And I found old radio tapes. Now, again, going back to early 90s of him playing. So it's like, let me hear what he was doing back then to see what I was using as my guideline. And it was really dope. Like he doesn't feel that way. But when I'm thinking back to like 91, 92 and hearing the stuff that he was doing on the mixer that he was doing it on, you're like, yo, this is super creative. Like your options were really limited in what you can do. So being able to be that fly and that funky with two records, like it was dope. It was dope.
Yeah.
I was really glad I found it.
What's one of your favorite things to do when you're not DJing?
I
know you got the motorcycle.
Yeah,
right?
I was gonna say, like I'm into a couple of things. So like I have some bikes, old bikes specifically, which I really dig. So, and being fortunate enough to live here in California, like you can ride almost all year long. And we have some beautiful roads. So taking the bikes out, I've been designing some clothes and stuff like that. So I've been working on that stuff as well. When I'm not spinning, I'm still working at some point. I'm still looking for ideas or inspiration, even when I'm just hanging out, So it's never like the gears are never not turning, you know what I mean?
Totally.
But it's all fun. Yeah.
With that vintage motorcycle, I know it's a vintage Harley you got, right? So it's the Kickstart.
Yes. So I have a few of them. Yeah.
You got stranded a few times on that with those the way those engines turn over.
You guys really have all the good stuff. So I have a 1948. It's a panhead. So tank shift kickstart, all original. I have a 46 knucklehead, and then I have a 64 panhead, which is like chopper style. I've been stranded a couple of times, but oddly enough, they're pretty dependable. Like it's not a bike that I feel sketchy when I go out on.
Yeah.
But there's definitely shit that happens, and it's because I ride with a bunch of homies that like all have old bikes. It's all part of the game, you know.
No, that's cool.
We've definitely gone out to go for a ride and have gotten to the gas station and have not gotten past the gas station. So
What's the longest ride you've taken on one of those bikes?
definitely a few hours. I mean, I've rode quite a bit on those. What's the longest ride I've done on one of the old? I don't know, 2-3 hour ride. You know, both ways. So maybe like 4 or 5 hours total.
Okay, that's a pretty
It's
good ride.
it's not as uncomfortable as it sounds.
Yeah.
You know, the 48, I have like this big, if you look at photos, I'll show you photos, has like a big fur, like real fur cover for the seat. It's like pretty comfy to be on. The 64, which is a chopper that you're sitting on the rails of the bike. So, you know, it's not the most comfortable, but you kind of just fit into this little pocket, you know?
Yeah.
And the 46 we're still working on, but it's going to be medium comfort. You know, you're not really on a motorcycle for comfort totally, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, hell yeah. But it's fun. I will say that. And like, you know, with these old bikes, being one with the actual machine itself, and like, I don't know, there's something just simplistic and kind of magical about having this 70-plus-year-old machine like fly down the road, you know?
Totally. It's pretty cool.
So, yeah,
That's
thanks, man.
dope.
Uh,
Yeah.
So me and Drew were just out in Atlantic City towards the end of last year. We went out there.
Word.
We went out
Yeah.
there for the why
DJ
can't I
Expo.
think? Yeah, the DJ Expo.
Yeah.
We kind of represented DMS. We just
That's
passed out
awesome.
some swag and talked to
Yeah.
everybody. And we you know, we flew into Philly. We went and got some cheesesteaks at Pat's, and we
Mhm.
know that Pat's and Geno's is like the big two, you know, right there. But
Yep.
we wanted to ask you: is there one that you prefer that, you know, gets slept on, or is
Yeah.
it one of those two?
The beautiful thing about cheesesteaks in Philly is that you can pretty much find a good cheesesteak in any neighborhood, right? And while, you know, Pat's and Geno's are like the tourist traps, it's a beautiful space. I mean, you can't beat being in that area with the lights from Geno's and like the griminess of Pat's, you know?
Yeah, totally.
And it's like live. Like we would go, of course, if anyone was in town, or you'd go at night, you know, to be able to go at 3-4 in the morning and it still feels pretty big is like, you know, it's dope. But, you know, when my parents would order food, like Friday would be the day that my mom would not cook and we would order food. And you would just order from your local spot. And you
Right.
would get like, I don't know, 2 cheesesteaks, 2 pizzas, and a 2 liter of Coke for like $20, something crazy cheap. Every neighborhood pizzeria that makes cheesesteaks is pretty spot on. Out of the recognizable ones, Steve's is around the corner from my parents, and I really like Steve's. And there's another spot called Delisandro's, which is around the corner from where I used to live before I moved out west. And both of those spots I really dig a lot. So I would
All right.
recommend going there, but they're not convenient. You know, where Geno's and Pat's are like right in the heart of town, kind of.
Yeah.
These you got to go a little bit out of.
We were driving back from AC in the rental car, and we got a notification that the flights got delayed. So we were like, well,
Dude.
might as well go make the stop and
You guys
and
did
get
the
one.
right thing, man. Yeah, you know.
So
I was gonna say, if you were to pick between those two, which one would you pick though?
They're both really different, right? So I probably would say Steve's, only because like, so you guys got the cheesesteaks, right? And Steve's, the meat is like rectangle slabs. It's thin. It's not chopped up. So I like that Steve's does this like thin pieces of steak, and they have this like melted cheese. So it's almost like whiz, but it's actually like American cheese that they melt down. So it's like liquid. I don't know, man. It's slamming. And it was convenient that it was right around the corner from my parents' crib. So
next time I'm going out there, that's the one I'm definitely going to try. You mentioned the expo. The expo was good. It was kind of weird because it was right there in like the end of August, beginning of September, and things had just kind of opened back up, you know, and Atlantic City was weird. You know, a lot of the clubs weren't even open yet still because they couldn't get staffing, and
the convention was about half full. It's just the numbers weren't there, but I mean, we still had a good time. It's the first time I've ever been out there. It's interesting.
The crazy thing is that the last time I was at the expo, we were at the Vestax booth, and the Serato booth was right next to us, and it was the year that they were debuting. and we were on the QFO. So we were all like, my whole crew was cutting and showing how to use the QFO and the newest Vestax mixer at the time. And everyone's head just kept like, including ours, kept looking at this Serato booth like, what's this thing? And I think the Technique CDJ came out that year.
Oh,
So
shit.
like, I think Louis Vega and them were debuting that thing, and that turned out to be a flop. But like the
Which is
Serato
crazy.
booth was, I know, because we all thought it was the dopest thing ever. And then my man got one, and like it didn't sound the way you wanted it to sound. It didn't feel like it looked the look, but it didn't have all the things that you wanted it to have, And just remembering seeing Serato like version 0.1 or whatever it was pretty crazy,
It's almost as if that exact time, it's crazy. I didn't realize they came out at the same time, but it's also interesting that Phase and the Rain 12 came out the same year. And I remember being at NAMM, and everyone was looking forward to the Rain 12, and you see the Phase, you're going, well, what is this? This is interesting. This is a lot cheaper, and I could use it with what I already got.
Yeah, I mean, the Phase thing sounds really good. I haven't got my hands on one yet, only because I still heard like there were some issues, and I don't really need any issues at the moment, when things are running pretty smooth.
Right.
But I like the idea of them. I think they're going to be really rad, like once they just iron more of the creases out, you know what I mean?
I have a pair. I've used them every Saturday at the club since the reopening that I play at on Saturdays.
Yeah.
And I haven't, knock on wood, I haven't had any issues. So
yeah, I've heard people say they're great. Yeah, for sure.
My only suggestion, if you get a set, would be to buy the one that comes with the 2 extra pucks.
Right, you get the 4 joints, right?
Yeah, I made the mistake of just getting the 2.
Right.
But I pretty much just leave mine at the club, and they just charge, and when I come back on Saturday, it's good to go.
Yeah, for me, it's a little tricky because like when I'm bouncing around club to club, I feel like even when I have something dialed in, I get to a place and for some reason it's not always just plug and play, So I feel like it's easier for me at the moment to just either rock on a CDJ or play on the tables and not have one extra piece to connect. You know what I mean?
Totally makes
So,
sense. When you're bouncing around a lot of places, it makes things a little more difficult versus when you're just at a residency and you're the last person that's touched the gear every time.
Right.
So
right.
Totally get it. I mean, when we just did a gig in San Diego and we got there, and of course the one CDJ is like not responsive, and so we get it. We totally get that.
Yeah.
But what is we always ask this question, and what is a popular song you should be playing because it's like popular, but you refuse to play because it's just like one it's just not you.
It makes you cringe.
I've missed a lot of the TikTok songs. So I never really got down with the app itself. So I miss a lot of those songs. I'm trying to think what would be one of those songs.
It's crazy. The TikTok thing is, I feel like, changed stuff so much because it's like we've even been talking lately is, the songs, and as you know, everybody's attention span's so short anymore. But even with TikTok, these TikTok songs that come out and that are hot, they're even like, 2-minute songs. You don't even gotta really make the quick edit of it because the song is only a minute and 58 seconds as is. So it's just wild.
Man, I have this discussion with friends of a similar age range, and like I hate to feel like the old dude, but like it just makes me gravitate more towards older music again. Because it's like I can't connect with this, and I really can't even think of a song at the moment. I'm trying to look up like what the TikTok songs are. Maybe I've just been fortunate enough that I haven't had to really get into that as of yet. It helps that I don't take requests. So like, I don't even know what those songs would be.
No, it's all good.
A lot of those, basically with TikTok, we're noticing it's all recurrence. They're just,
which is beautiful. I love that. I think that's great. Can I ask you guys what your songs are?
What's crazy is we've been talking that we feel like stuff that was deemed kind of like cheesy, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, is
Yeah.
kind of not cheesy anymore. When we've met, like, he does a lot more weddings than I do, but I do a handful. And it's like we'll meet with people recently, and they'll be like, we just don't want any cheesy stuff. And now you have to ask, well, what's cheesy to you?
Right.
And
What's
they'll go,
cheesy to you? Because what's
Bruno
cheesy to
Mars, Bruno, they like this and that. Like, they'll say stuff that, it's just everything's changed. And with all with
Yeah.
the way the house music and like the Jack and
Yeah.
House and the disco house that's kind of like coming back. What's the Mamas and Papas song, Drew, that you and I have texted back?
California Dreamin'?
Yeah,
Oh,
California Dreamin'.
Yeah,
That
there's
like
like a
a
tech house version of that,
yeah,
Yeah.
that's been
which I
kind of,
don't like it.
for me it's whatever too, but
Yeah.
I've had a couple people that have come up and I'm like, this is funny. Or ABBA, gimme more.
Oh my
That one's
God. There you
huge
go.
right now.
If I had to pick one, it is Dancing Queen.
Oh,
There you go. And there it is.
I will tell you that I couldn't think, and I'm thinking of all the new songs. I started playing at Bungalow weekly after things started to open back up. It's like it was an old school vibe, beach house vibe, but I kept getting requests for like ABBA, and it goes off so bad. And it was like the one song I hated, didn't have it in my computer, wouldn't play it, never played it. And I was really at like a moral, I was at a crux in my life where I was just like, man, I'm going to have to add this to the computer. Like, I'm kind of doing a disservice to everyone, and I still don't really enjoy it, but it's only because there's certain parts of the songs I don't like, that like opera kind of like part.
Yeah.
Well, the bass line is really dope. So I'm trying to convince myself that I don't feel like a sucker playing this song, but that would probably be the one song that like I feel like I shrink a little bit when I gotta play it because I feel embarrassed that I'm playing it. But I will tell you that I feed off of the energy of the crowd. So knowing that it brings them that much joy makes me feel good about playing a record like that,
Totally.
And I think it blew up on TikTok. There was that meme I know everyone saw where the DJ dropped "Turn Down for What" and then you trolled him into that. And I think that kind of sparked people to want to start hearing these things again.
I gotta tell you, that video brought tears to my eyes. I enjoyed watching it. Yeah, I really liked it.
Yeah.
Just because of how bummed he was. That's how I
so
feel
bummed.
when I have to play it.
That's exactly how I feel. I just want to hide like under the DJ booth when I have to play like the Shania Twain. And,
Yeah.
it's like a bachelor party. And like the bar I do on Fridays maybe holds, $150. So if you got like 10-person girl bachelor party that walks in there and they leave, it like makes the room feel empty. So I always feel obligated to those big parties to like play that. And I just want to hide every time because
I'll tell you, like, for me, my problem is that I'm always like too cool for school, and I feel like it kind of hurts my cool. But I remember the few times I've seen AM play, the one thing that I always took from him is like he dropped all of that cool and played whatever really got people going. And he would play records that I would never think to play because in my cool mind, they were incredibly cheesy. But the reaction was so strong that it kind of like swayed me a little bit, where I was like, I need to be more open when it comes to like picking records and not worry about being so cool or who's going to worry about, who's going to feel some type of way, And I always knew to play for the girls anyway, but he would just play way off the cuff shit that I would never have in my computer, nor would I have a record of or whatever, So keeping that in mind when I get to moments like this, like especially with Dancing Queen, that's kind of how I was able to convince myself, like, hey, remember, like you've seen this and it works, and I try not to use it as a crutch though. Like I don't play it as often as people would play Be Faithful. Like I pulled back from a record like that because it felt too easy. You know what I mean?
We always tell you that kind of stuff all the time. It's like, cool, you played Usher, into This Is How We Do It, into Be Faithful. Like everybody's doing that. That's great.
It's too easy for me. I'm not, if that's the way you want to play and your whole purpose is like, I just want to get the best reaction and give everybody what they want, do it. You know what I mean? I'm not telling you don't do it. It's just that, like, for me, I'm always up for a challenge. So I'm always looking for like, what's another record? But I've been
Yes.
playing a long time. You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
like, jump
But
around. This is how we do it. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, there's got to be something else. You
But I
know?
feel like that's kind of what makes Excel from what
Indeed.
my understanding is.
Yeah,
You do a lot of
100%.
like parties that are, more cool. And I would even say that
Yeah.
the crowd is more in tune to
Educated.
educated musically. Yes, that's the way to say it. And one of the things I wanted to talk about with you is you've done the do-over party, and this is a while ago. You
Yeah.
released a edit pack that had like samples. Like
Mm.
I have a couple of those that you put out.
I'll give
One's
you all
like
of them. Yeah.
mass appeal into like it's the original sample
Yep.
into into mass appeal. And I was telling Drew I love those so much because if I'm doing like a cool event like a fashion or like something like that and I'm
Yep.
playing like some indie stuff, I can drop that and
Yeah.
get into hip hop that way. And like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love those edits. So
Sample digging has always been a thing that I don't know. I mean, honestly, like, hip hop is what got me into this. That's what
Yes.
made me want to do this. Being in hip hop culture has kind of guided me through my life, even into house music. Because what happens is you find something that's really dope. You know that this song is sampled from something else. You dig that sample, and then you're like, man, this song is really great as well.
Right.
Then you discover more of these songs from similar artists, and it kind of like leads you like this tree of life thing, right? And then you get to like classic house music, and you're finding, oh, this was sampled. You know, some of my favorite house records were samples of other records. So it's like being able to make those edits to draw this connection, because you have to remember too, like, even with the younger generation, eventually they grow older. Eventually the music that they were connecting with doesn't connect anymore, and they have to dig for something else. So to have this like elevated musical collection and finding a bridge just adds a little something extra to when you're playing. You know what I mean?
Well, you're seeing it now happen again. Say that J Balvin record "In the Ghetto." We're becoming the how our parents would go. That was already done. That was this
Right.
song, right? That's happening now.
Right. And I'm totally stoked about it because, like, it just goes to show you that music that we grew up on, like, it's here. It's not going anywhere. The big discussion a lot of us have too is like, where are some of the, like, music is so disposable now, right? Like,
Totally.
where is this music going to be in 10 years? No shade to someone like Gunna, but do we see us going back and playing a Gunna record 5-10 years from now? It just doesn't feel like it's going to stick around. It's just throw you new content now to keep you entertained, but then it just gets thrown away. Whereas a lot of these older records never really kind of went away. At least they didn't go away in my world, like they were always still kind of circulating in the like the environment of playing music.
I think
So
it's one of the things we've talked about before on the show, and it's kind of what you're mentioning with the social media and the TikTok and all the stuff. It almost seems like people aren't even given a chance to figure out what they like anymore, because as soon as an album comes out, another one comes out, and that one that came out 3 weeks ago is just totally disposable. It's not
Old
hot
news.
anymore. It's
Crazy.
like people don't know even what they like. They just like what they're told is cool. A lot of times they don't even like it, because when you play the record, it gets a crowd pop for the initial, and then the rest of the track, they're just kind of like standing
it just
around.
falls flat. I know.
Yeah.
It drives me insane.
Yeah.
Drives me
And
insane. Yeah.
that I think has a lot to do with the social media and just people being like, oh, I'm supposed to like this song because I've been told it's cool, but I don't actually like it.
Yeah.
And it's like, even 15 years ago, 10 years ago, you have of a year of music, you would have 20, 30, maybe 40 big songs throughout that year that were big songs. And now I feel like the last few years we've had maybe 10 at the most that are like songs that you can play that
Yeah.
get a reaction and and people like. And
2020 was like a funky year because not a lot of music came out because
Totally.
there was no way to really fully like monetize. So I feel like everybody was holding on to their tunes for that year, right? Because no one wants to waste a hit if they have one sitting in the tuck. But either way, when I go through, like, I randomly threw out the weeks, the months, whatever, I look through just to make sure, like, hey, am I missing something? And there's always a record or two, I mean, because at this point, there's no way to be fully connected to everything
No.
because people show up with their curated list of music that they found, and everyone has a different list. And it's still kind of like intriguing to me to figure out how people discover music. I did a corporate gig last year, and the big record was this Elton John Dua Lipa record that until someone asked for it, it was not on my radar at all, right? So I'm thinking, like, in my mind, I'm like, how are you finding this? Like, why is this a big song? What am I missing, right? Like, because I feel like I'm plugged in. How am I missing this? And like, people discover their music in just so many different ways, and it's hard to be in all of them. You know what I mean? Like, you can't be plugged into everything. So,
Totally.
yeah.
I feel like you used to be able to like stay on the Billboard chart and be like, know what's charting on Billboard. But now you have Spotify, you have Apple Music, you have SoundCloud, you have, all these different outlets. And like, my girlfriend, it's crazy. All she listens to is like Spotify US Top 50. She just plugs her phone in and that's what she listens to, right?
Okay.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
it's funny because when I get in the car with her, I'm like, what are you listening to? Like, what is this? And it's like something that's on the Spotify Top 50. And I'm like, I've never heard this song ever.
When I look through those lists, I'm kind of like, I don't even know what any of this is. It doesn't really sound like something I would want to play. So.
But I think that's a lot. She is doing what everyone else is doing. That's what my opinion is. That top 50 is now the new radio station.
Yeah.
And it's funny, like Drew and I talk because one of the things, we edit for DMS and we do a lot of stuff behind the scenes for DMS. And some of the problem we feel like we have is like, we'll hear a song come out, we'll play it right away, and then we'll be like, oh, that song didn't work at all. So then we stop playing it. And then like 2 or 3 months later, it's like you see somebody else play it and it's popping and you're like, what?
There's a fine line of when you kind of like jump the gun too early on a record, right? And then it doesn't work. And then after you cross that line and it becomes this hit. And I've definitely seen that throughout the years, like especially back in the day, back in vinyl, it was like having the exclusive, having the newest record, and you'd have to chase these records around or, hope that you'd get the record sent to you, and you're like breaking this record, but it's too soon. I saw Funk Flex play in Philly, and he had Jay-Z Do It Again, the joint with the weird beat that has like a hard beat to follow. And he dropped it super early, cleared the entire floor, which then 3 weeks later wound up becoming a super huge record. But, in his eyes, he was like, I'm going to break this new Jay record. And it emptied the entire floor out. Plus, it was just a hard record to dance to anyway. No one could figure out the beat. Learning how to bring that record in was just a task in itself, So that's happened several times where like you just kind of jump the gun too early on a record, and
Totally. So one of the other things while we're talking about some music, we were gonna do our Serato Top 5. If you want to,
this is interesting.
Yeah.
So Drew hit me about this, and I was like, "Damn, I've never looked at this before. Let me see what my top 5 are, because what I thought it would have been is nowhere near what it would have been." So, I got these homies. And we got like a little like sub crew called the Rat Pack, which is like Melstar, B-Man, Swift, all these dudes that are like really, really, really dope at making edits, like to the point that it's like they have stems of records that
dope
you didn't even know existed. So I'm looking through my thing, and I got like 26,000 plays on an edit that B-Man made, and I'm like, man, I've definitely not listened to this song 26,000 times since I've got it. So I guess somewhere like the metadata is kind of like transferring from file to file, maybe.
Yeah,
how it's
it
being
saves.
shared.
Yeah, it saves in the file.
It does.
So then like I scrolled down a little bit, and even still it doesn't make sense. Like A Craze Funky Town has 2,000 plays. And I'm like, I definitely did not play that more than Do It To It. Like, there's just no way. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I sent Drew a couple of screenshots. I don't know. I guess we can decide what we think is actually like real. Because then the numbers fall off really strong. And they go from like thousands of plays to like I don't know, like I got 997 plays on a song, Props by I, which is like an older Pete Rock beat, which is really, really, really dope.
Yeah.
But I don't think
I
I've
love
played
that song.
that. I love it too, and I don't think I really played it 1,000 times in my Serato. But I'm not going to debate it. Maybe I have, you know.
Yeah.
So
Well,
yeah,
I try and think about it as Serato play count has only been around for what, so the 2020 draws a blank in me, so I
Yo,
always add a year, so maybe 3 years,
I didn't
right?
even know that it existed until you said something. Straight up, straight up. I'm
There's
not
so
even
many
bullshitting.
so many DJs we've had on here. That's how they organize their crates, is just by play count.
No,
So
yeah,
I kind of look at it, but not
yeah.
really. But I would say somewhere around the 200 to, depending how much you gig, and I know you play a lot, but somewhere
It's
between
so
the
weird.
2 and
Yeah.
300,
Uh,
maybe 400 would make
Let me see.
sense.
I'm gonna pull it up again so we can look. What's crazy is that I've used Serato damn near since the very beginning.
Right.
Like Jazzy Jeff showed it to us in A Touch of Jazz and was like, "This is going to be the next thing." And we had it that early, and I've never seen this before. And then when I'm looking now, I've on several computers since then. But like I said, my play count goes from 997, which is
Right.
props. Then it jumps to like 86. There's no in between. And the 86 is a transition of WAP, which I definitely I've not played. I don't think I've played this 86 times. You know what I mean? Like the
Right.
numbers just drop down really, really low. So
Well,
I don't
let's
understand it.
do a guesstimate then. I mean, we don't have to be exact because
No, it's fine. It's let's I'll just go with let's see. I would say if I had to guess just at the moment, this Do It To It is a really big record and I've played it a lot. Since I first heard it, it's just grown, you know,
oh
in
yeah.
every club that I've played it in.
I also
Another
like to ask, are you
yeah.
playing the original? What do you have a custom edit that you're playing? And
Hmm.
how are you mixing it? Are you
What I do is I have two versions. I have the original like extended version. I don't really do quick hitters. That's not really my style of playing. So a lot of my records that I have in Serato are just like full versions, extended versions, or it's an edit from maybe like one of you guys or something I've made. I have a transition that I made from the original into the Tech House version.
Yep.
And then there's a version, I think this dude, not even sure, I want to say maybe like Quest made, where it has the acapella of the original verse over the A Craze beat and then into Do It To It. So what I usually do is I play the A Craze version, run the first section, and then run the Quest version with the verse and run it back. You know what I mean? It's too good of a record to play quick. Like you have to let it breathe, you know?
agree? Oh, one more question.
Yeah.
Were you playing the original?
So yeah, I mean the original record a long time ago obviously was a good club record. It did not really surface back in my world until I heard the house version. I said, okay, well, let me see if y'all know this other shit again, you know? And oddly enough, it has brought attention to that other record. Like when I play it, I see girls singing the words to it,
Right.
not just the Do It To It part. So I'm like, all right, this is another record you can add back in to the collection of joints, you know? Another record that I'm looking at that seems to do really well that I totally missed is a record called Doses and Mimosas.
Oh yeah.
Cherub. Yeah.
I don't know where I was in the last 5 to 7, 8 years when this record came out, but it was not on my radar at all. No one has ever mentioned it, nothing.
It
And
was
all
a big underground record. I could see that being popular at Bungalow where you play.
huge,
Yeah, I
Yeah.
could see that.
huge. Great song. Don't get me wrong. It is a great song, but I did not hear this song until a year ago.
Yeah.
Straight up. So it gets a lot of play. Going back through some of these sample edits for sure, like there's a sample edit that B-Man did of Flavor in Your Ear, which for a lot of the hip hop heads, like the big question, the ongoing question is, what is the sample? There's a story that Easy Mo B, who produced it, tells where it's like a hair dryer that he pitched down and all this other stuff. And I'm not really sure if that's just him kind of covering up the fact that the sample was never cleared or whatever, but nonetheless, it's a great story. And B-Man has an edit where like the stems of everything are kind of isolated and pulled apart, and it just is really dope to drop it. I'll put Props in there because it's a really great record for me. I enjoy playing it.
Oh, I was just gonna say the artist for everyone that's listening. They might
Oh,
not know it.
I. So like
Yeah.
I is Props, and I will say either "Piece of My Heart" by Medusa or like that Te Bote. I might be saying that completely wrong, but sorry.
You got it?
The remix version has got a
Yeah.
lot of play, so that's a solid 5.
Those are all good ones, and it's oddly enough, I think the only one that we've talked about with other people is a craze, the do it to
Yeah.
it. So
Yeah.
it's always interesting to us, who's playing what, and
Yeah.
the uniqueness of it all. So it's cool to
If
hear.
you're curious about my 5 least played records in Serato, they're all a Boogie with a Hoodie records. No shade to him, and it might just be because of how it's alphabetical order or whatever, but those are the bottom 5.
That's
So,
hilarious.
yeah.
Well, I know the style of residencies you have. You're going from house to the bungalow, which is just chilling vibes, into hip hop, and you're all over the place. So, and that I think that your top 5 really speaks to that.
Yeah, like the bungalow gig is a blessing because I feel like coming out of everything, like traveling just wasn't there yet. It's still kind of not. Like don't get it twisted. Like, to get on an airplane to go to a club, there's a lot of risk. There's not a lot of money being put out there yet, really. Like, if you're not like a hard ticket sale, it's just not there. So you have to decide like what is really worth it. Having something that you can just kind of like count on every week as a cushion is really dope. The beautiful thing about bungalow is that it's completely different every night. Saturday night, it's a club. The sound system knocks in there. Like I gotta wear earplugs when I play, and we're full tech house. Like if I run you my history from Saturday night, you would think we were in like Miami at like space or some shit. You know what I mean? Which is beautiful.
Is this the Huntington one or the
Huntington
Santa
Beach
Monica?
is a
Okay.
monster. Like
Oh yeah.
I know I saw you guys Thursday and it was a little bit more chill and it's like a 2000s vibe. So that's what we're playing. But Saturday is a different beast. When I get in there, Strip is playing from the daytime. There's no warm up. You get in
Yeah.
there and we hand over to the shit. You're on. You're on
Yeah.
from that moment till the end. So it's like it's been really good practice because I feel like the first couple of gigs, there was a moment where I felt like, damn, like when I got to go back to traveling again, I don't know what I'm going to do. Because that was the question. It was like, well, what's everybody playing? We haven't been in a club in a year. Like, what's everybody want to hear? Or am I out of the loop? Having that gig kind of trained me again that when I went to play my first few gigs, I was in there throwing bodies around because I was already in the zone. So this was nothing for me. So like,
Yeah.
Premiere, Avalon, like I was in there giving it to them, which was awesome because it felt really good. It's not something like I did resident gigs when I lived in Philly. So like it's not something I want to spend the rest of my life doing. You know what I mean? Like it gets a little exhausting at times when you're playing every week, same spot, same people, and I really enjoy the bouncing around. I like city to city, airplane to the next city, So this is just a good like training session, a good keeping the blade sharp,
I think the pandemic flipped everybody upside down, and just it was
Absolutely.
for a lot of people, it was the best thing. I know, some people didn't do so well or suffered through it, and I
Yeah.
understand. But I think for a lot of us, it was the reset we all needed, and
Yeah, for sure. I'm not totally bummed, I
yeah,
think we were on the more fortunate side of it, so that has a lot to say for how our experiences, turned out. But having a moment to just kind of step back, and
yeah,
like reevaluate what you've been doing up to that point. I mean, I started in 91. I quit my last job in 99 and I've been DJing full time since then.
that's right.
So, and I've never missed a year, you know what I mean? Like I've been running straight since. It was a moment to be like, okay, this is how we're going to move into the next chapter.
I only do I do Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, and that's pretty much it. And honestly,
Yeah.
it's great because I got so much other stuff going on that I'm like, man, how was I doing those that all? And
It felt good. Like when I was in my 20s and I was doing that, it felt like an achievement, And Philly was a different city then too. So like being at every spot, it felt really good, Plus, like I was getting paid cash. I was making a lot of money in my 20s, and buying a lot of sneakers, rims on the car. Like, I had everything that I wanted
Yeah.
in my 20s aspirations. But then eventually it was like, I really want to travel. I mean, that was the whole purpose of me moving. It was just like, okay, I'm doing all of this. I want to go around the world. I want to tour and play, It just felt like after doing all of that, there wasn't really a lot of attention being put on all the work that was being done. And me fast forwarding it, I'm saying to myself, like, well, how long can I keep doing this? How long can I keep doing 5, 6 nights a week when I'm playing clubs? I'm outplaying the lifespan of clubs, right? So like a
Yeah.
club would exist, a club would go, it would become a new club. I'm playing in the new club. Like, how many times over am I going to keep running this same circuit? So like that was the whole point of me moving, which it wound up working. But even still, we're kind of seeing the same thing happen where like now the circuit of clubs got bigger, but they're out, we're outliving the lifespan of those clubs. Those clubs are closing. There's way more people playing than there were before. There's way less clubs that are paying money than there were before. You know what I mean? So like trying to really get creative and figure out a way to exist in this artist world and have a good life at it, not like a struggling life at it, it's been a trick. Yeah.
it seems like that too, even in the pandemic definitely helped. I feel like what I'm about to say, but it seems like there was already something happening where it was like the bar and nightclub groups that were very successful were realizing, oh, we are the really successful ones, so we're just going to open one in each of the big cities. And
Right.
now it's like I feel like there's only a few really big bar and nightclub groups that are booking and bringing in DJs, and
Yeah.
you're either playing at those or you're staying local and doing the local thing, and it's
Right.
hard because of
Yeah.
that too.
Yeah.
And I think when everything shut down, it just condensed
it
it.
flipped everything. Right. And to be fair and to be clear, there is nothing wrong with playing locally, right? Like
Totally.
there's people who are wildly successful in their local scene. There's people who are just faking the front, traveling. So just
Totally.
because you see somebody in another city playing and it looks like it's something, don't get it fucked up. It might not be what you think it is. It could just be, and most times it's just a lot of like facade. I need to keep this image up. And I
Yeah.
will tell you, being a person that has done this and does it well, it's exhausting to jump plane to plane, play at 2 a.m. on the plane at 6 a.m. And this is coming from a person who does not really drink.
I was just gonna be my next question. Are you drinking and doing this, or?
I mean, like I'm a one drink dude,
Yeah.
It's a strong drink, but it's like, it's not like I'm getting hammered and then I'm doing it. It'll burn you out quick. It'll
Totally.
fuck you up quick. So like you can only live that like 80s rock star life for so long. For me, longevity was my key. I want to be able to perform at my highest level for as long as I possibly can. Drinking doesn't really work for me anyway. Like I enjoy myself. I enjoy being around everybody. Drinking is a social thing. It's just something to have in my hand. I can play a night and not drink. I didn't drink at all this weekend. I was totally fine. You know what I mean? But I will tell you, like running off a little sleep and showing up to the next city, and you don't want to spend your day in bed, so you want to see the city. You want to like venture out. You right? Because what's the point? I mean, I've been to cities and not done anything, but still, like you want to make the most of the city. So like finding a time to kind of rest and be able to perform again that next night, that shit gets tricky.
So with that being said, one of the things that we always ask people is if they have any like travel hacks or travel tips. Do you have anything that you would say that is kind of like slept on or something that you do that helps you?
I mean, the best thing that I tell anyone that wants to do this, right, is rest is so crucial. Like sometimes you just got to rest, you know?
Yeah.
And as much as you want to run and run and run and run, it's like sleep. I mean, your brain needs that proper, your body just needs that proper amount of rest to kind of function, right? Eating well, I'm not saying that you got to eat a salad every day or whatever the case is, but like making sure that you're eating well, hydration, dog, like Pedialyte, whatever the case is, like make sure you're properly situated. Because if you want to really feel good and be able to like bounce around, that's pretty much that. And then of course, like I think most people will tell you flying early as possible. So you know, if there's any delays, you kind of got wiggle room to navigate another travel plan to get to that gig so you don't miss money,
I started traveling over the pandemic, and it was for weddings and corporate
Mhm.
stuff, just because Cali was shut and I needed to do something. I learned that. I was always like, oh, I'll just take the afternoon flight or whatever. But man, I learned that. Oh, first
You
flight
get
in,
jammed up once
flight
and
out.
that's
Yeah.
all it takes,
He's also downplaying it a little bit. He started traveling a lot. It was like every weekend he was
That's
traveling
awesome.
for
Yeah.
events, and these are
Yeah.
some
But
pretty high profile events he's been doing too. So it's pretty cool.
but it's what you were saying in I started doing it because I felt like I hit my wall here, and I was very successful here, and I just wanted to do something different.
Yeah,
Just like,
which is
hey,
great.
let's go
I mean,
try this out.
listen, the private event scene is huge. I mean, I know people who are making a killing.
Yeah.
A killing. Like six figures, but like high six figures in privates, weddings, so forth and so on. And like, wedding was a taboo thing for us back in the day of like, oh man, I don't want to do no fucking wedding. You know what I mean? Weddings are different now. Weddings are like because it's us that are getting married. So like you don't want the cheese, you want the dope shit. I want the club. I want to celebrate. And it's, I mean, I'm planning a wedding which is not going to be this kind of wedding. But me and my lady are getting married this year, and like I get it.
Congrats.
It's thank you. It's
Yeah,
once in a
congrats.
lifetime, or it's supposed to be once in a lifetime. So it means a lot to people, that they want this amazing night. And no shade to a band, but bands specialize in certain music. Not every band can run everything, and play it well. Whereas like, someone like you, Drew, like you got everything, how to put it together, and there's a reason why it costs what it costs. You got to go back and forth with the couple and try to figure out like what are these special records, and there's a lot of like research and all this other stuff that goes into like making a wedding really great. So the fact that there's a budget there for that makes perfect sense.
I would say I spend anywhere, start to finish 20 to 30 hours depending.
Right.
Load in, load out, phone calls,
Camera.
emails, just
Yeah, of
yeah,
course.
it's a lot of work.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, again, like the fact that you can make a really good living off of doing this, I got homies that, like I said, they do really well, and I salute to them for that. You know what I mean? And every now and then I'll play a wedding. My weddings are a little bit different. It's either like someone I know personally,
Yep.
or someone that they just want me to come play, and we work out the numbers, and the numbers make sense. You know what I mean? So, and I have fun at them. Like I don't feel no type of way, because I love being able to play everything, playing older music, newer music, and just being a part of someone's like special day feels really good,
They're so different nowadays. I mean, it's like you said, it's not even a wedding anymore in our
No,
normal thoughts.
no,
We're bringing
no.
CO2 guns out to this shit now.
Yeah, I think it's dope.
You are the only DJ that we've interviewed that has his own app, so we should talk about that.
Right. Okay. So as far as the app goes, this was kind of a no-brainer thing for me. A lot of my career, not only being based on relationships, was based on mixes. I'd be at the club and somebody would ask me if I had a mix from this set. Go back before the club into the 90s. I was making mixtapes when I was in high school, so like 94. I would dub all the mixtapes and I'd carry them with me. I'd have my little backpack and I'd have all my mixtapes and I would sell my mixtapes and I'd get, 10 bucks a tape. And me being the person that I am, I would always have, I don't know why I did this now, thinking back, but I'd have my master copy on me at all times. And I'd go out with the crew and I'd pop my master in and I would never get the tape back.
Right.
So I don't have any of these old tapes. They're gone. I don't know where they are. Like obviously they're, who knows. But I made a big part of like the promotion of who I was having these mixtapes in the club. Best calling card, best business card you can have is a copy of the set, right?
Yeah.
So I would have CDs. I bought a CD burner and like that's how I got my first Mac, is because I would use the Mac to like burn the CD, and I used Cubase to
Yeah.
kind of like record into, and I would take these mixed CDs at a club and I would sell them at the store, and whatever. So all right, we fast forward. Well, Mixcloud was great, but Mixcloud limits how much you can listen to it, and I kept getting these people that were like, man, I found this mix that I love, but like I can't listen to it again for a month because I listened to it three times.
I don't understand Mixcloud. The same thing. You try and promote it, and that's the one thing that we have to promote nowadays. And more people are pissed off about it, so I don't even push it anymore. It's
The only
trash.
thing that makes sense, the numbers have definitely dropped for sure, but the only thing that makes sense is whatever deal they worked out with the streaming source, because they're the only ones that have been able to still keep this going. This limitation has to be there for some reason, but it's annoying. And my fear was that, well, you're just going to replace it with something else, and I didn't want people to do that. So talking to my man who built the app, he did Jazzy Jeff's app, he did Scratch's app. The main idea for me was to have these mixes available for anyone at any time. And we did the app for Android and Apple, and the app is free. And I put all my mixes up there. I put most of my dates up there and whatever content there is. And there was a bunch of YouTube videos back in the day when we were shooting videos too. And it's just a single place that works as a good business card. Like I don't carry a business card around. I haven't carried a card for years. You want to find me, just go in your app store. You search my name and the app is there. You're curious how I play, there's a bunch of live sets. They're not like they're not like an Ableton piece together set. It's a live recording from where I was. So like how better can I show you what it is that I do? You know what I mean? So like having the app made perfect sense for me, because that's all it is. It's just sharing the music. If no one's listening to what I'm doing, then it's pointless for me to keep doing it. You know what I mean? So
I love everything about this app. You're making me want to do it now. But how hard is it to update? You know what I mean?
dog, it's dumb easy. There's a dashboard page.
So it's like a
Uh,
WordPress site almost.
Kind of. It's its own back end. Like it's its own dashboard that you literally log into the dashboard. The content is in a drop window. Music, videos, events. Bong, bong, bong. You just pick one. You upload a photo. You upload the mix. You write in whatever data you need to write in. It uploads and it's there.
And so the mix lives on the phone. They don't have to stream it.
No. The mixes are all like streaming, right?
Okay.
Like it's not taking up space on your phone. The mixes are all like cloud based, I guess, from wherever it's held in like a FTP, right? So it's streaming from the FTP. I don't believe there is a way to save anything offline yet.
Okay.
But I'm sure when that capability is there.
Just because I fly, and I would have all your mixes loaded if I
That's
could.
where that's where it gets a little tricky, right? Is that if you're on the plane and you want to listen offline, like what are the
Right.
options? What I usually tell anyone is that if we get to that point, I'll just send you whatever mixes. Like it's no big deal. I'll
Right.
send you the hard copy Dropbox links for you to download. Like uh, it's more for me, maybe in I don't know how you view it from a business sense, but for me, it means more that someone wants to listen to that because there's so much content to listen to that when someone says like I want to listen to this mix, well, I want you to be able to listen to it. I want you to have it. You know what I mean? The same way I'm going back and finding all these old mixes from back in the day. It's like that's what I want the legacy of me to be when I'm long gone, is that people are still going back to these mixes, right? So
I
that's
agree.
kind of like everything, man. Like, yeah, like it's not so much concerned about what it is right now. It's kind of like what you're building for the long run of what it is. Because that's for me, like that's why you got into this anyway. When you first started, it was about like how am I going to make my stamp in this culture? Like how am I going to have a place that kind of means something, you know? What we see now is too many people that just want to get in, get to the top. They don't really care. They're not really choosing a name. Nothing really matters. The content doesn't matter. Creativity doesn't matter. It's okay if it's not real. You know, just everything that we went against, you know,
Yeah.
and it's bugged out, you know. It works for some, but it doesn't really change how I want to do things, you know.
I definitely didn't get into it for the money. I feel
Nah,
like
man.
I sold off all my gear because I was in a band before, and I sold off all my gear, and I just thought, hey, I could do this. This is way more fun. Just started
Dog.
collecting records. Actually, I got into making beats. That was what I wanted to do. I
Yeah.
was recording in
Yeah.
college, and
Yeah.
I wanted to make beats. And then everyone just kept asking, "Hey, you got the equipment? Why don't you DJ?" So
Yeah. That's rad, man.
And for anybody listening, the app is just DJ Excel, and
Yep.
he's got 106 different mixes on the
Yeah.
app.
I update the mixes as often as I feel like recording, you know. I try not to overdo it, you know what I mean, where it's like it's too much to listen to, but there's definitely every one of those mixes is something for somebody, you know, whether it's house or hip hop or new or old or just cool vibey shit, you know. So yeah,
well, it's on the homepage now.
Yeah, I downloaded it too.
love,
And
man.
aside
Thank you guys.
from the app, you've got your own clothing thing you're pushing now, or yeah, tell us a little bit about that.
You're way
Yeah,
more tech than you're giving yourself props
I
for,
know.
man. Yeah, this
No,
guy's
I
got
know,
an
I know,
app. He's like
I know.
pushing his own clothing. I mean, holy
I
fuck,
know. I'm
dude.
kind of like dumbing it down, you know,
Yeah,
just because that's
kind
how
of.
I am. But I I look at all the tech stuff. Like I'm, you know, I'm involved, but what I purchase, like what I actually spend time learning how to use, I'm very selective with.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense, right?
No, it makes sense. I feel like everything's very like on brand, like everything you do,
Right,
it all makes sense together,
right,
with talking, it's like, well, that makes sense,
right, right. So into the clothing thing, like I had to learn Adobe. I had to learn how to like design. I don't know anything, dog. I didn't go to school for clothing, nothing. I'm just a fan. I've always been big into clothes. If I did not go and pursue a music career, I probably would have pursued something in fashion. So when it came time for me to, I really decided I wanted to do merch. I wanted to do it more like in a subliminal sense from like a clothing brand standpoint, not so much like a DJ shirt. So I started doing these shirts. XL obviously was the brand, and it was doing really well. I think just the styles that I was picking, or the way I was flipping shirts, or just doing graphics, or the meanings behind them did really well. Once everything kind of came to a stop, I would say March, I played my last gig before we took this break. A buddy of mine saw everything that I was doing, already had a couple of the pieces that I released, and he wanted to do something because he was making products as well, but I think he just really dug the cool in what I was doing. So we kind of like brainstormed a little bit. I came up with this name, all time high, which is like this hoodie. And there's a bunch of clothes that we've released. We just released collection 2 of all time high, and that was doing really well. But like I'm designing everything, we're sourcing all the material, like a lot of stuff that takes a lot of time, which I had the time to do because I wasn't traveling around playing gigs, which was great. The XL stuff is still coming out. So this next release, which is going to drop next month, I flipped the Nervous Records design
Oh,
because I was really like thinking back again to my early days. Like that label really resonated with me as a kid, and Black Moon and Smith and Wesson and the house records that they put out. Like those were all like really big staples in my upbringing. And the idea of like what that was on the East Coast and what life is like more out here on the West Coast is kind of like unnervous, very chill, like, not really nervous at all. And having the idea to kind of take this like Felix the Cat and flip it into the unnervous joint
that's dope. I love that.
is pretty much like I built this whole collection around. So there's these like fleece lined coaches jackets that we made, the snapback hat with the like old school green under brim, and then there's a t-shirt and then a long sleeve tee that's like just crazy like faded dye. It looks like an old black tee with like records down the sleeve. So designing all of that stuff and just putting that together, and that's all going to come out actually at Self Edge, which is like a men's boutique that is here in Los Angeles, New York. They're online, Portland, and Mexico, and they kind of do like real high end Rick Owens, 316, like made in USA, made in Japan type stuff. So it's a huge honor that I can even have stuff in there, and the all time high stuff is available directly online at ath.com. And there's a bunch of fly shit in there that we did too. So that's kind of been like keeping me busy on the clothing front and letting me just be creative in a different sense, and kind of like freed my mind up a little bit from the actual like head in the computer spinning mind, because then it felt really fresh to come back to playing records again.
I'm just so fascinated by this journey into the
Thanks,
clothing.
man.
How hard was it to learn
The
Illustrator?
dumbest thing I ever did. The dumbest thing I ever did. It's so difficult though.
And then the clothing. Are you just online and just calling places up, and do you have to place different orders? I guess I have so many questions. I don't even know where to
Oh,
start asking you
all
questions.
right.
I want to know it all. I'm
Um,
fascinated.
a lot of it has been like a lot of research. So I have like I have a nice collection of clothing. Some of
Right.
it's vintage, some of it's high end. So I have these pieces to use as like a blueprint to study.
Right.
And now you're kind of picking apart the details. Again, very similar to what DJing was for me back in the day. I had to listen and
Yeah.
dissect what I was hearing and then figure out how to do it at home.
Looking at the label, checking out who this person is on this
Everything.
person, the drummer on that person. Yeah, it
Right,
all makes
right.
sense. I love
It's
how it connects.
very in line of like the same thing, And then just having these ideas, you're creating what is like the void, right? Like, what do I want? I'm making stuff for me. What do I want to wear? I want a coach's jacket, but I don't want it to be like swooshy, and I want it to be fleece lined so it's a little heavier, and
Yeah.
so because I live here, the fashion side of this is huge.
Right.
So I was able to kind of like use some of the homies and kind of build a network and I was taking tons of meetings with people, how to make clothing, who's going to sew, what kind of sewing, trial and error, making shirts that we didn't like the way they looked, finding another sewer, going to a dye house, I want you to recreate this faded black color that looks like this. How do you know? Asking a ton of questions. Just coming in, not knowing anything,
Yeah.
learning what's right and what's wrong, or how things are made, and just becoming a student again. Which, I mean, I'm still a student in my music sense, but like the novice student who really has nothing. And it's a never-ending learning experience. It's frustrating, to say the least. Even with learning Illustrator, I'm not a master at it. I can get to a certain point, and then once I've kind of like reached the ceiling of what I know at that moment, I got to go to another homie who says, I say, look, I needed to get here, like get me here, and I have to, no one's working for free. Everyone's getting paid. You know what I mean? It's just another investment, and why not invest in yourself? So the fact that like I'm making the stuff is one thing. Again, same with the mixes. Like making it is one thing. The fact that people like it and they want it and they support it, that's what makes it work. That's what brings the next one on. That's what keeps me like, oh, okay, I'm on the right track here. It's the very similar to what the mixes were. The fact that somebody wants it, they want to listen to it, they learn from it, they discover a new song, they discover an old song. You know what I mean? They find a sample. Like that's what XL is. That's everything that I've been, because that's what I feel like the homies that came before me did for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, it's nuts, man, for sure. And I downplay it a lot, but like,
You are downplaying it because I can sit here and talk to you all day. It's fascinating.
dude, I mean, again, it's the fact that you guys see something that I see is a huge honor, right? Because I don't know, man. It's just, I feel like with a lot of what's going on, people don't pay attention anymore. So the fact that someone does pay attention means everything, because that means you fucking get it,
That was one of the things I was just gonna say is I appreciate how much you pay attention to all the stuff, like the clothes and the details and everything. I personally like that. When I buy like boutique clothes, or like I want to go buy something, I'm like, man, this just looks like somebody went to like Walmart, got a black T-shirt and
Right.
printed on it. Like, I don't know if I want
Dog,
that.
if I broke down, like when I break down like how a t-shirt is made, because it's not like we're using a blank tee. We have a guy, I gotta go find fabric. I gotta go into a warehouse downtown that has endless rows of fabric, right? That's white fabric. And I gotta feel everything. Now you gotta touch everything.
Yeah.
What feels good as a shirt, right? Then I pick that whole roll, massive roll, takes the whole car up. And then you got to pick out this stuff, which is called ribbing. This is what's the neck of your t-shirt.
Right.
I got to pick that out. Then I got to bring it to the sewer. I got to give him measurements, which is like you have to it's not just like shoulder width. There's a whole like graph of how you make a shirt,
Yeah.
And then he has to sew all those shirts for me, right? And then we take the graphic, and the graphic just isn't a new graphic. It's a faded graphic. It has like cracks in it. Every crack has to be created, like recreating something that looks vintage, The print house hates me because I got to go in there and be like, how do we make it look like this, And it's everything. It goes against everything. Like that WrestleMania tee, whoever printed that shirt, they wanted it printed where the graphic was perfect. I want it where the imperfections are there. So I'm like, don't make it perfect. Make it the opposite of what everything that you've learned,
Yeah.
And then I take that shirt to a wash house and dye house, and then I have them dye it, and then they have to wash it to make it look faded, right? So then I pick these tees up, and then I have to QC every one of those tees to make sure that it's good enough to sell to you. So that's why, like, when you look at some of the stuff, like, it's priced, in my opinion, if you compare it to another brand, it's priced low. But if you compare it to just an item, not knowing anything, it's a little bit higher priced. But it takes so much work.
Do you have some of these videos online, maybe showing the process? I mean, I think that could almost add to the
Yeah.
brand and really helping people understand why they need to pay more for this.
We haven't shot any videos. There are videos that I'm going to shoot as I continue to show the all-time high collection and break down each piece. But there's a line of where like you're giving away the magic.
Totally.
No, yeah, I don't want to ask all that, but
It's nothing that I'm hesitating on telling you. It's just that there's like, you don't want to give away the sauce, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
like,
yeah.
you know, there's only so much ingredients you can give out. And if someone hits me, like I've had homies hit me like, yo, how did you make this? And I
Right.
break it all down. It's the same thing. I'm not the guy that's going to tape up the record label. You come to ask me, what is this record? I want you to know. I want you to be like, yo, I heard this from Excel. Excel showed me what this was. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's just me explaining to you that like it's not just buy a bunch of black shirts, print a one color print, throw it out into the world. There's numerous steps that
Yeah.
go in, and it's still a learning experience. Like it's still just finishing the Unnervous collection was tricky with COVID because things were delayed, things
Oh,
were taking a lot longer. Some of the stuff, like I did knit socks that you'll see eventually, like 3-color knit socks that have the artwork knit into them. So like a sports sock.
dope.
Just getting that done, was really tricky because I've never done a sock before, like having there's a template of how the sock is designed, like picking up a color, trying to pick the shade of green, like, something that's in my mind. I have to make it, I have to match it in real life.
Yeah.
It's crazy, man. It's definitely one of the dumbest things that I've done.
Well, I'll tell you why
yeah.
I appreciate it, because you're re-challenging yourself. I think
Indeed.
we all in life get comfortable,
Way too
and
comfortable. Yeah.
and just challenging yourself. And I use this analogy of a band's one of their first albums is always like their best album, right? Where they were hungry, starving, living on the floor, and you put all this. This is the only chance you got, right? You're putting every single thing you got into it, and it sounds like you almost did that just with this closing line. You kind of were like, "Fuck it, this is a
I mean,
new thing I want to learn," and the,
I've
the
done
amount of
this.
detail is impressive.
Thank you,
Seriously.
man. I did this several times over. I mean, the move alone from Philadelphia to here was putting everything on the line, starting over completely, like
Right.
from zero. It made no sense to
What year
anyone.
was this?
I moved here in 2009. Honestly, I think it was February 1st, but it may have been the 7th, but I think it may have been the 1st. I got off the plane.
But you got a bad snow up in Philly, and you were like, you know what? This is it. Fuck this. I'm out. 'Cause
No, man.
that's how I would do it here. I get
Nah,
a bad
man.
snow.
If you would have asked me a year prior, I mean, I've told this story a bunch of times. If you would have asked me a year prior, I would have told you I would never leave Philly. I had no intention. I was loyal to the city. Not saying I'm not loyal to the city now, but like I felt like I owed it to the city to make it in Philly until I met a friend out here on a botched up gig on a whim that so I'll explain the story again. A homie that was working at the radio moved out here and was doing bookings for people. He asked me to come out and play a party at the Standard downtown. It was like a high profile party, some celebrity party. There really was very little money involved, but it was an opportunity. I came out here to play the gig, got off the plane, got to the gig. Nick Cannon wound up playing the gig, and I got bumped.
Oh,
So I'm all the way out here. And my opportunity that, again, I was not moving here yet. It was just come out here and play this gig. Maybe you can get something popping and you can get around a little bit more. Squashed. I come back down to the lobby of the Standard downtown. My man is spinning in the lobby. He was like, yo, why don't you come play? You're here. Just come spin. So I was like, all right, cool. Him and I are playing in the lobby of the Standard. This other cat hears me playing and obviously hears that there's something different from what he's heard before. He comes over. We start talking. We become friends. We go back and forth for about a year of him like, you got to get out of Philly. You got to get out of Philly. Nah, I'm not trying to do that. I'd come out here on trips and visit and make the rounds and whatever. And then eventually, like, the earthquake thing was the last thing I was holding on to as an excuse. I had nothing else. Like, I'd given every excuse, and he countered that excuse with a reason to come. One of the worst earthquakes we've been in happened on my last trip. Everything's rattling. And we were downtown. He was living in a loft, and the Orpheum Theater, I think, is right across the street, and people were in line for So You Think You Can Dance auditions. Not one person got out of line.
That's
So I
Kelly.
said, "Oh, I'm tripping. This is not that big of a deal." Told my mom that day, "Yo, I'm moving here." You know, gathered up all my things, kind of like, you know, sorted out everything I needed to sort out. My family threw me a little bit of money. I wasn't prepared financially to move. You know what I mean? Like, when people ask, a lot of people started to ask me, like, well, how much do I need? There is no amount, because it can pop in a week. It can pop in a year or two. Like, you may run out of money, but it's a risk. Like, I was willing to put everything on the line for this thing that I've spent so much time doing. Right. So I moved. Stuff is in storage. I'm sleeping on my man's floor. You know what I mean? I had an apartment. I had a fully furnished apartment with, like, dining room set, furniture, like, shit on the wall. Like, you know, I was living good. I was cool.
Yeah.
Stuff was in cardboard boxes. I'm sleeping on my man's floor. Went out every night for a year. How I'm playing at Bungalow is because I met Jen back then, going out every day for a year, that I wound up playing for her when they were promoting parties.
Yeah, that's dope.
So, you know, there's a lot more that goes into this story, but you know, I'll save you guys all of the thing. The idea is that, like, for me, putting everything on the line for this, it just always made sense, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, you don't know if it's going to work out. I honestly don't know. I mean, I'm not where I want to be. I don't know if any one of us are. I don't know if I'm going to get to where I want to be, but I know I just got to keep pushing towards whatever that is, you know?
And that's the life of an entrepreneur is, you know, you can go as high as you want or you could chill, right?
Indeed.
It's kind of the beauty of it.
Yeah.
The older I get, the more I learn that nobody knows the answer to anything, and we're all just trying to
all
get
just
through
floating,
it.
yo.
Yeah,
We're all just
yeah.
floating, you know? It's I get someone asked me, and I said, I don't even know how I got here. I don't even know how 20 years of me spending full time. Like, nobody, it doesn't make sense to anyone in my family, because no one does what I do. So, like, the fact that I've made a decent living and you know,
I get it too. The thing that you said that resonates with me is, like, I'm at Cincinnati, and Drew will tell you I'm, like, really proud Cincinnati, and you know, it is one of those things where you feel like you owe it to the city to do something from here and be here.
Yeah.
So I understand that totally, and
you
know,
I feel like a lot of East Coasters, they have that feeling.
yeah, and it's hard. I don't know. It's hard to give it up. So I give you props for
Thanks, man.
doing it.
You know,
And,
I tell anyone that asks too, is just like, you don't have to move. Moving only makes sense if there's something there to gain. And for me, with Philly, I just felt like I was at a ceiling, you know, like, I worked in radio. I worked in 2 of the 3 radio stations that I could have played on. Played every club, played the bigger gigs. You know, I was making the most money that I felt I was going to make locally per night. I just didn't see what else was there for me to do. And I was more in fear of having to climb back down the ladder that I climbed up. And I just didn't see how the next, I mean, I was 29 when I moved. So, like, I just didn't see how the next 10 years were going to play out.
Yeah.
In a successful manner, in forward motion, not just being stable. Like, for me, I was like, okay, this can't be it. There has to be more.
Yeah.
I just didn't see it there. So it just made sense for me to go to a place where the entertainment world had more opportunity, and New York just was not my vibe.
one of the things we wanted to ask you about is playing with Jazzy Jeff and what that's been like. I mean, you're both Philly guys, so you have that connection, but we see it as it's such a big thing. And like, we were huge fans of AM, and naturally we're huge fans of Jazzy Jeff.
Yeah.
But what's that been like for you? And I'm sure you have a really good personal relationship with him as well.
We all know Jeff through my man Sat. Sat worked with Jeff very closely. He toured with Jeff, and we got personal with Jeff through Sat. So we're all on the album. We all did scratches. My relationship with Jeff and where I really found the value is picking Jeff's brain, because he was probably the first superstar DJ that we all knew. Yep. Who did something that I wanted to do. He toured around the world. How do you go to Japan? How do you play in Japan? Explain this again, asking questions. And it wasn't so much of show me how to do this scratch. It was just tell me how it happened. Tell me how life happened. Tell me how you got here. Explain to me, this, that, and the third. And hearing his story of how this all happened, again, it's rolling with the punches. Life threw a curveball one way. He had to make adjustments and then got into doing something else. And not everything that he did worked out for the best. So then he would have to make adjustments. And for the story, without getting into too much of the detail, Kenny Dope, who is his good friend, who we all know through Jeff as well, kind of was the guy who guided him into touring around the world spinning. And it's just inspiring to see that, because again, we're all just trying to push this boulder along, right? Playing the 2x4. I mean, I've done a couple of gigs with Jeff back in the day. We did Allen Iverson's 40th birthday party, I think, together. Damn. Which, he could have asked anyone to play along with him, but I was the one that got asked to play, which was rad. You know what I mean? And when Live 8 was a big thing, that was the gig I think we did a 2x4 on, which was huge in Philly as well, And it was kind of unheard of back then. Jeff didn't really play with many other people, especially not on similar decks, you know what I mean? Where you're vibing together. It's a really hard thing to do. The vibe and energy of two greats can be destroyed if you guys just are not vibing together, Right. So playing on 4 turntables is a lot harder than you think it would be.
I actually think it would be really hard.
Yeah,
I don't think it'd be easy.
Yeah, for sure. It's hard to be, because all of our brains operate completely differently. We pick music differently. And where one person views a party going, another person, so it can turn into a tug of war the entire night.
Totally. I've done it with some people, and it's there's people that it's worked great with, and I'm
Yeah.
Well, we just don't have the same idea of what needs to happen here.
Definitely. And it becomes it's difficult. It's not fun. It's more frustrating. Your vibe is thrown off. Their vibe is thrown off. It's not really cool, So again, having this personal relationship with Jeff has been really rad. And, to watch him kind of continue to grow and expand in this DJ world, whatever it is, it's a guideline, that I think we all like to follow, only because he comes from a similar cloth, he has a bit of an advantage, just due to pop culture than someone like myself would have, but we come from a same mentality of turntablist first kind of thing,
And speaking on that, you said you guys all met through Sat, and you meet Sat One, who also lives in Philadelphia, and you guys are in a DJ crew together, the Scratch Mechanics. Can you tell us a little bit about that and tell listeners a little bit about that?
The brief story about that was just that having a DJ crew around our time was kind of rare and unheard of. Everybody was just kind of out for themselves, you know what I mean? And that Philly mentality of like, I got something, I don't want to share it, you know, I don't want you to take it. But it felt like we were all kind of like on the same wave, and we hung out together, we practiced together. Um, you know, we learned from each other, we played gigs together. Like it just made sense. Like, why don't we just move as a unit, and then we can kind of achieve more as a team?
Yeah.
So I reached out to some of the guys, Jay Ski, who I spoke of earlier, being the first one, because I felt like if Ski didn't want to be involved, then it really didn't make sense to do it at all. And Ski said yes. And Sat, I knew from a long time ago because he was co-owner in a hip hop shop that was around the corner from Steve's, the cheesesteak spot, which is where my parents used to live. And before I that was, I would go to this shop and I would like, you know, spend my little bit of money on a Phillies Blunt t-shirt or a mixtape. And I got familiar with Sat through there, and Sat had turntables in the shop, and I would go see him, and sometimes he'd be spinning, and I'd ask him to, he doesn't remember this, I don't think, but, you know, I'd ask him to show me a scratch or show me how he did something, because I was able to be this close, you know, and that was rare being a teenager, you know. Fast forward, Sat just wound up being in our circle, and I asked him to be involved, and it, you know, like a lot of these things are just kind of like coincidental, like the universe kind of doing what the universe is doing. And it's crazy to draw back, you know, because now that you've lived through it, you can kind of draw back and connect all these dots. Right. Where you're like, oh, I get it. Like, this is how this happened. This is how that happened. Again, like knowing Jeff, you know, being able to like Sat toured around the world with Jeff. That's huge, you know. My homie Adam Baum, who's in the crew, like he was assistant to Questlove.
Jeez,
so wow. A lot of things happened, a lot of opportunities happened back then because of Adam being in such close proximity to Quest. We couldn't have guessed it, you know what I mean? Like shit just happened. It was yeah. So
one of the things I'll mention is I've never got to see, of a lot of the traveling guys, you're one of the only ones I haven't got to see. And somebody else who I've always wanted to see DJ live was Sat One. His mixtape he did, the first hour, I think I've burned through that mix so many times. So yeah, that's awesome.
Sat is dope. I mean, he's a nightlife staple. He's been in it. He's a little older than me, so he played a little bit more than me, like into the younger side of nightlife. I was still kind of like sneaking into the clubs when he was working at them, right? So he's been around. Like he's a monster when it comes to playing. All these guys from Philly, like girls too, you know, they just were raised with such a high bar of talent that they just learned how to play really well, you know? And it's dope to see them still working. You know, there's the crew itself is hope I remember everybody, but Jay Ski, my man Question, Sat One, Adam Baum, Active, AV, B, J1, my man Elixir, my man Rab, Spinbad, who recently passed away, and Impulse, I believe, is everybody. And they're just all like, you know, homies, man. They were just friends, like-minded people. Yeah. We didn't really add any more folks. Everybody kind of moved on their own wave, you know. Some people did radio, some people stayed local, some people produced. Active has toured with everyone you can think of, you know what I mean? From Nas to Kanye to Janet, you know what I mean? Like,
and speaking of Impulse, you guys have a little production duo together, and you guys produce a lot.
So we put out a bunch of records under this name Alpha Pair, and they were all like house records, just kind of like created from our upbringing, because being in Philly and Bmore, where he's from, house music was a big thing, and it wasn't like a different world back then. It was kind of like this kind of house music. It was in the hip hop world. If you went to a party, it was not uncommon to hear Strictly Rhythm Records or Armand Van Helden and stuff like that. So, you know, using that as the backbone of what Alpha Pair was, like we created these dance records that they're on Spotify and Apple Music and all that other good stuff. But yeah, so that was kind of like how we wanted to go about it. It's all like sample based house music, you know.
Well, you also mentioned to us the Zeus Out the Mud LP.
Right. So I was talking about this around the time that, again, gigs came to a halt. I was like, I need to crack this computer back up, maybe start making beats. I don't sit still, man. Like, I really don't like downtime. I don't watch a lot of television. Most of my time spent on social media is like research for real. Like,
Yeah.
scrolling through the gram, if you look through my explore page, it's like clothing, design, music. It's all just like researching knowledge, learning more. It's not like girls in bikinis, even though every now and then that's a nice addition to scrolling through a bunch of old clothes. I started working on beats. The idea was that I was going to make hip hop beats that I love. My man Zeus, who I've known for a long time, Zeus and I met each other at the last job that I worked at. We've been friends since. He rhymes. He was in a group, and the idea was to have Zeus maybe rhyme to them as reference, so I can kind of like get a better idea of how the beats need to be sequenced and sound when I wanted to shop them to another artist.
Had you produced before, and what are you using to kind of do all this stuff?
Ableton is what I'm producing on, and I've produced before. I did a whole thing for Complex where like I produced a bunch of beats for this like interactive trade show that they put together. I produced random shit throughout back in the day. Most of the Alpha Pair shit I've produced on my computer.
Right.
And I just ping pong back with Impulse, but like the files are kind of all on the computer. The remixes for Dev and all that shit is all stuff that I've done. It's just, I don't know. Like I had like a little Boss 303 back in the day that I would tinker with and make beats on and shit like that, but never really pursued it because I was always a little too tunnel visioned on like DJing is what I need to do. Don't get distracted from that. Because I used to rhyme too. I had a group, and before I was into DJing full time, people thought I was going to get a record deal rhyming. But I just came to a fork in the road, and DJing felt like I had a better lifespan. And I just felt like if I had to choose one, I enjoyed it more. It just came back around. Like, let me just dedicate some more time to production. And after doing a few beats and having him write to a few beats, I really dug what we were coming up with. So I was like, yo, we just need to keep doing this. And then eventually 3 tracks came 6 and 6 came 9 and we had a whole album. So I was like, yo, let me talk to some people. Let's get this album released. Let's like put this joint out, we had it mastered and I shared it with Jeff and I shared it with Revolution first, just to kind of get their blessing. Everybody gave a great like criticism of what they heard. Like, they critiqued it and I thought we had a good product and we just let it fly. And that's on Spotify and Apple Music and all the digital music sources. And it's just some good old boom bap shit. It's an easy listen. We're halfway through the second album now. And I think, we're really proud of it. And so far, anyone that's listened to it, I think it's a breath of fresh air. It's not like trap, drug rap. You know what I mean? It's like,
I'm stoked. I'm going to check it out. I saved it.
Cool, man. Yeah, thank you, man. I hope you dig it.
I think that's going to wrap it up for us today. We just want to say thank you for coming on and chatting with us and telling us everything you got going on, which is a lot. And it's been super interesting to listen to your thought process and how everything's kind of evolved and all that. So we just want to say if you want to hit everybody with your social media and the app and everything one more time.
DJEXCEL, DJXO. That's my IG. That's how you find the app in your app store. That's my website. Everything is pretty much the same. All-time high, ATH 3 times is the clothing line. Of course, shout to the DMS crew. I love you guys, and you've always been very supportive from the beginning, and anything I can do, to give back the support to you guys. Of course, I got you. So
appreciate it.
Yeah, man.
Hey, super fascinating interview, man. I look forward to digging.
Yeah, I'm glad we got to do this, man. It was a really good idea.
Thank you, man.
Thank you.
Much love. I'll see y'all later.
See ya.
Yeah.
Peace.
Peace.